Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing Brandomens Stigar by the band Kultivator.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
So today we're dealing with a very unique album, and I think the uniqueness of this one doesn't come from its backstory, from anything else other than the music found on it. So the way I'm gonna share with you this type of uniqueness is of course by sharing with you some of my favorite bits from this album. So Brandomens Stigar is the only album by the Swedish band Kultivator. This eclectic prog album came out in the thriving year of 1981. Of course, I'm just joking, this one came at a time when prog was losing its popularity. And this had an effect on the band themselves. The band Kultivator is actually comprised mostly of past members from another band called Tunnel Baron, and those guys made Kultivator and they made this single album. But then as the 80s came along and punk music became a thing, they got interested in that, so they disbanded and each and every one went his own musical way. And this album is nothing like I've ever heard before. Now I think that with a bit of effort I can try and describe this music to you with a bit of comparisons. So the music itself, to me at least, sounds like it's on a middle ground between Zool and the Canterbury sound, and what I mean by that is it has this absurdness and very unique way of using vocals as an instrument like they do in Zool music, but also it has the Canterbury sound in which it takes a lot of influences from jazz, although not being too direct with it, and the keyboard parts are also pretty much reminiscent of bands like Caravan and Khan. Another point of comparison is the way that the music on Brandomens Stigar can really change moods in a very fast and shifting way, in a very unexpected way, much like a band like Gentle Giant. Another thing which I can compare this one to is whenever a recorder comes into play in one of the songs, it really does sound kind of like Griffin. And yeah, I think that about sums it up. And this album can really get fun at times, like really fun, although I do believe that to the unaccustomed ear, this album might sound like a pretty delightful mess. It seems like the music on here is always on the verge of being alienating towards the listener, but somehow it just manages to stay on the edge of that and still be somewhat accessible. And at first I actually didn't know what to expect of this album, and when it began with the first 3 songs I started realizing that yes, this was gonna be one of those albums that starts off pretty strong but then just goes downhill gradually from there, but boy was I completely wrong. This album from basically the 4th track just got better and better and better, having a very strong midsection and an almost perfect section towards the end of it. Some great tracks from these sections, and I'm gonna translate them from Swedish so you don't have to, are The Cave Mill, Springfowl, and my personal favorite, Novarest. And actually Nova Rest isn't a translation, that's just the name of the song. It doesn't have a translation from Swedish, I don't know what it means, but they repeat it a lot of times in the track, kind of like, as I said, Zool, so I don't know, maybe it's just the term that they coined. I don't know. And yeah, this song in particular basically has all that I described to you of this band. It's really fun, it's jazzy, it's surprising, it's really good. It's actually very good, and I think mostly because of the ultra strong mid section that is basically comprised of improvisation. It sounds just amazing. It's a celebration of sound, which I really enjoyed, and I'm gonna come back to this track in particular a lot of times, although the other tracks which I've mentioned are also absolute bangers. And all of the instruments being played on Brandomens Stigar are pretty freaking great, like each and every one, but I do want to draw your attention to one singular instrument, and that is the bass. He plays fantastically on here. The bass lines, they're sharp, they're good, they're very innovative, and the reason I'm pointing out the bass out of all the rest is because to me it feels like it's kind of lost in the mixing. If it had a deeper sound, more thicker sound in the mixing, it could have been better noticed, but I myself noticed it quite well in the background, and I think it is played marvelously. And if Kultivator were actually going in the mindset of creating something never heard before, they totally succeeded in doing that. They created a sound in an album which I've never ever heard before. It has really grounded, strong influences, I think, from Swedish culture, but still it remains accessible and very unique. You just have to go and listen to it, honestly. And you know, when listening to this album, I started realizing something that I didn't really think about, and it mostly came up to me because yesterday I actually had the chat with Scott from the Prog Corner, and there we talked about Italy being a very influential country in producing great bands time and time again. But when I thought about it, I realized that Italy did just that in the prog scene back in the 70s, but I think from the 80s onwards until today, the country that has seen a lot of very good prog bands coming out of consistently has to be Sweden. And no, I'm not saying that good prog didn't come out of the US, the UK, but a lot of bad prog came out as well, like a lot of bad prog. But I think that Sweden in particular just has amazing bands, let's say. So you have the Flower Kings, and you have Moon Safari, and you have my personal favorites, Beardfish, and of course you have Kultivator. So yeah, this album, as I said, isn't perfect. I thought at the beginning it was gonna be, you know, like good, maybe, you know, mediocre plus, but apparently it gets really good. It isn't perfect in any way, but it's definitely one of those hidden gems that if you don't know, you should truly get to know right now. So everyone watching this video that doesn't know this album, go ahead, search it up. It's called Brandomens Stigar, which means, I think, childhood ladders in Swedish. Go and check it out. It's amazing, and it's definitely a ride worth experiencing. I love this cover so much. It's really good, and I'm gonna tell you something a bit embarrassing, but there are those albums which I just think are gonna be good because they have good covers, and I've seen time and time again that it doesn't necessarily mean anything. A cover can be great and an album can be shit, and vice versa basically. But I was really excited towards listening to this one because it had a fantastic album cover, and I don't know, maybe it's kind of childish of me, but I like it quite a bit. And the reason I like this cover quite a bit is because it really resembles my way of drawing. I personally like drawing mostly in ink on paper, having a simple black and white color palette. I personally just like that more than colors. I don't know, it's my own personal thing. And the other thing I really like about this one is the fact that it draws something very plain, very stale, very simple. My personal preference is actually drawing the Maui statues in the Easter Islands, which is also something of a stale subject. Another thing I really like about this one is the way that it uses framing, and specifically this one is using this giant black void on most of the cover to create this tiny framing for the drawing itself. That's totally something that I love doing in my own drawings, and I don't know, I really like that. The band name fits perfectly where it does, and I know there are some versions where you have the album name also written down in like handwriting, which is cool, but I chose the version which I think is better, and that's the one that just doesn't have the name of the album on it at all. And yes, I am well aware that this is not an impressive cover to most people viewing it, but at least to me, I have some personal connection to it. I think it's really lovely and definitely one of my favorites so far on the list. This album is definitely one of those that might have its rating risen after I given a listen to this album a few more times, but I think that for now it receives a good rating of 8 out of 10. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to Virus by Haken, and we're going to be joined by a very special guest on the channel, so stay tuned for that. I'm really excited for it. And another thing before I go, I want to thank my lovely supporters over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Brian and Clay Walnum. You guys are the best, and if you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description of this video or over in my about page. But that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.